All right, everybody. Welcome back to our One Heart, One Earth Global Healing Summit. I am Lisa Gunshore, and I'm hosting you all week long. And it has been just an incredible, beautiful ride of rainbow light, and I am loving every minute of it. And I am beyond honored to introduce you guys to Julie Hoyle. She is going to be leading our class this afternoon in mere moments. But I have to say, Julie has been a part of my life and my journey for like 15 years now, which is insane to even think it's been that long. And I've written about her in my first book. No joke, 3 days ago, I was writing about you in my second book
Oh,
because
wow.
it's been such a part of my life. And so you guys can't have a better treat for your lunch break on Friday afternoon than Julie Hoyle. So Julie, I'm handing it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Lisa, thank you so much. What an honor and what a privilege to be here. I am beyond excited. I'm sure everybody can feel the energy. It's been building over the last week, and I'm sure it'll continue into next week. And I just want to take a moment and say thank you so much for being here and for giving your time and for supporting this tremendous global healing that is taking place now as we participate. And as Lisa just said, I am going to be offering this afternoon honoring your soul contract, and looking at what your gifts, skills, and talents are, whether you recognize them and honor them and own them, how you are utilizing them, and especially in this time of change, what you're being called to in terms of utilizing them in new and more expansive ways. Before we get to that, let me introduce myself more fully so that I can provide some context for those of you that don't know me. My name is Julie Hoyle. I'm a transformation coach, an author, an artist, and an educator. And I have been offering soul purpose readings, life purpose readings, shamanic energy work, spiritual counseling, online programs with Daily Om and with the CourseCraft platform more recently, offering intuitive art workshops, which has been a lot of fun. And I've been doing the intuitive work, I think now for maybe 20 years or more, and really having a lot of success with all of those offerings. And the reason that there's been so much success with the offerings is that really what propelled me into the work is that I had a really radical, powerful, life-changing experience in 1989, and it completely turned my whole life upside down. And what happened is I'd been a lucid dreamer since childhood, and back in 1989 I had a lucid dream in which I was tapped on the top of the head by a master yogi who I think had passed away, from what I remember, in the 60s, when I was very young. And I hadn't heard of him before. And he appeared, tapped me on the head. I was filled with the most incredible energy, amazing energy. He told me to repeat the mantra Om Namah Shivaya, which means I bow to the light within me. And after a few seconds of repeating the mantra and the energy filling me, I finally seemed to crash through time and space, and I re-entered my body. And I sat up and inhaled. It was like I hadn't been breathing for the whole time I'd been dreaming. And the first thing I said was, my life will never be the same. And that statement was proven true. It was a prophetic statement, and it was proven true by what happened after that event. Even though by, outer appearances, I was teaching full time. I was teaching art at a government school here in Nassau, and, very, very busy. There was a lot going on. I was working in very difficult conditions, under a metal roof, with no AC or fan or anything, in 90-degree heat with a very high humidity. So I was, doing that all day. And at the same time at home, psychic phenomenon started happening. Light bulbs were exploding and fans were spinning, even though they weren't turned on. And at night, I would have the most incredible lucid dreams with Bhagavan Nityananda, this incredible saint or siddha that had given initiation. And then other great master yogis from the same path would come into lucid dreams and give teachings and initiations. And after those events, I'd go online and try and figure out, who they were, and I'd read up about them. And then also I had initiations and dream teachings with Lord Jesus, with Mother Mary, with mystics, Christian mystics, one of whom was Father Bede Griffith, who I'd never even heard of prior to having the dream experience with him. I also had many dream visitations from His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And again, I had never studied anything of Tibetan Buddhism at all. So there was, years of these incredible experiences, just amazing experiences that would take me days to assimilate. And I'd take the teachings on board and then I would practice them. I was taught how to do energy retrieval. I was taught how to go to different planes of existence. I was taught how to help people that had committed suicide and go into what I was told was called the plane of forgetting. So I was learning, all of these things. And at the same time, it wasn't bliss-filled. I was also given initiations and teachings that were terrifying, really terrifying. And I also had to work on the shadow and confront the darkness within me. And the great Sufi master, Mrs. Irina Tweedy, put it really well when she said she had to go and undergo the same thing. And she said that she had to face the darkness within her and it almost killed her. And that really is the essence of shadow work. So the whole process was extremely destructive in terms of, everything falling away that I had believed myself to be prior to the initiation from Bhagavan Nityananda. So what happened in, I think it was 2007, something like that. One of the Siddha masters from that tradition walked into a lucid dream and she said to me, "When are you writing the book?" And I sat back because honestly, I didn't know what to say. So I said, "What am I supposed to write about?" And she just leaned in and she gave me one of those looks as if to say, "Come on now, figure it out." It's obvious. And then she started to walk away and she looked back over her shoulder and she said, "It's important to understand your journey. It's important to understand your journey." And the reason I'm sharing, all of this, and I won't go into too much more detail because I've written about the whole thing really extensively in articles and in my book. But I'm just offering it to you again as context so that you understand where I'm coming from. and also as a way of just sharing with you the importance of understanding your own journey. Because if you understand your own journey, then you can look at what your innate gifts, skills, and talents are. You can see if you are utilizing them. You can see where you're underutilizing them, and if you need to make shifts and changes. So this afternoon, with respect to that kind of inquiry, what I would like to do is share a story with you. And I would invite you, as you're listening to the story, just to really listen with your heart and really connect in as fully as you can. Because in the story, there are 3 characters. There's only 3. And the invitation is for you to connect in with your heart and to look and see where there is a resonance with one of the characters. Which character do you resonate with in terms of your own particular journey at this point in time? So sit back, relax. You can close your eyes if you want to, or join however you want to connect in. And I'm just going to read through the story with you. So the title of the story is Who Am I? There was once a young man who was born into a family that was comfortable in terms of material wealth. While the young man never wanted for anything, he always felt that he did not fit in. He was definitely the odd one out. The young man wanted to explore deeper meaning in his life, whereas his family seemingly did not. So the young man determined that when the time was right, he would go to India or some far-off place in order to search for a master or an enlightened being who could awaken him. In the meantime, the young man completed his studies. He graduated from college and he was offered a job at a bank. To achieve his goal of finding a master, the young man decided to prepare himself. He read every book he could get his hands on spiritual awakening. He studied the Tao. He practiced Zen. He listened to Dharma talks on YouTube. He did workshops on shamanic healing. He read the Bible from cover to cover. He explored the teachings of the Christian mystics, and he spent time studying the Kabbalah. The young man also learned neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotherapy, Reiki, and acupressure. And to help combat stress and move through life with ease, the young man meditated every day. He also practiced hatha yoga, and he kept a journal to write down his dreams and explore the shadow. After several years of studying these teachings and doing these practices, the young man was at his friend's house. A small group of the young man's friends would meditate together. At the end of the evening, when the young man was getting ready to go home, he said, "Oh, I can't wait for the day when I can quit my job and head off to India or someplace exotic where I can find a guru or a master." His friend replied, "Hey, Joe, you may not have to go too far. I recently heard about a woman they call Ma. She's meant to be the real deal, an enlightened master. And guess what? She lives close by on the edge of town. You should go check her out. But be warned, many have tried and they cannot get in to see her. She has a gatekeeper. he will put you to the test, and if you don't answer correctly, he will boot you out. As soon as he heard this, Joe felt this tremendous energy rising up inside him. He was super excited, and he determined right there and then that he was going to impress the gatekeeper and be introduced to Ma. With that in mind, Joe decided he would plan his visit with care and precision. His strategy was that he would take everything he needed with him. He would prove to the gatekeeper that he was a worthy student. He had done his homework. He had put in the hours, and he could prove it. Joe went out and bought a big rucksack. Then he filled the rucksack with his Bible, his meditation mat, and meditation shawl. He added in his chimes and his symbols. He folded his prayer flags and his little prayer wheel. Joe included his Jesus statues as well as his Shiva and Buddha statues. He made sure to write down his Reiki symbols. He dug out his chanting book and added that. He took off his japa mala, his prayer beads, and he dropped those in the mix. Joe pulled The Power of Now off the bookshelf, and he added that to the pile. And for good measure, Joe threw in smudging sticks, Palo Alto, and a big box of blue pearl incense. By the time Joe was finished, his rucksack was full to the brim. However, Joe did not mind carrying the weight on his back. And one quiet Sunday morning, off he went in search of Ma. Although Joe could have driven or taken a bus to the outskirts of town, he decided to walk. It was just a couple of miles. To prepare himself as he walked, Joe repeated the mantra. He prayed, and he kept himself busy with focusing on why he was going to try and find Ma. And before he knew it, he was soon on the outskirts of town. The neighborhood in this area was run down and very quiet. What few buildings were left were derelict. Homes had been abandoned, and there was not a soul in sight. Joe walked up and down the main streets. He went down side alleys. He went under a bridge and across an abandoned railway line, but he could not find any trace of anyone who might be living there. After more than an hour of searching, Joe decided to give up. He figured the story about the Ma was just a story. It wasn't true. So he began turning around and walking back home. However, on his way, he happened to glance over to the right, and he noticed there was a side alley that he'd not seen before. Joe walked down the alley. It went a long way, and much to Joe's disappointment, when he got to the end, there was a brick wall. Darn it, said Joe. However, at the moment he was about to give up and leave, he noticed something intriguing. On the very bottom of the wall, there was a small opening, approximately 2 feet by 2 feet. Wow, thought Joe, I could get down on my belly and pull myself through that space to take a look and see what's there. I won't be able to get my bag through the hole, but I can leave it here for a while. There's no one around and it should be safe. Joe dropped his bag. He lay on his belly and he pulled himself through the small opening. Much to his amazement, when Joe was through the hole, he found himself in an open courtyard. In the courtyard, there were 2 pretty wooden dwellings surrounded by herbs and flowers. Both dwellings had small decks. On the deck on the left, a man was standing, watching Joe intently. Joe realized, oh, it's true. He must be the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper inquired, "How can I help you?" Joe replied, "I'm here to see Ma." The gatekeeper asked, "Who are you?" Joe said, "I am Joe Smith. I'm a banker and I live in the center of town." The gatekeeper said, "Wrong answer. You need to leave." Joe tried again. "I am not my body. I am not my mind." The gatekeeper replied, "Wrong answer. You need to leave." Joe offered, "I am spirit." Once again, the gatekeeper responded, "Wrong answer. You have to leave." In desperation, Joe quickly recalled all the practices and the teachings he had been studying, and he threw as many answers out as he could. Joe repeated the Lord's Prayer and the Hail Mary. He recited the Rosary. He sang every mantra he knew. Joe recalled Bible verses. He shared passages from the Quran. He quoted the Kabbalah. Joe detailed what he knew about shadow work. He talked about how to meditate. Joe got down on his knees to show the gatekeeper how he prayed. Joe talked about energy retrieval work. He talked about lucid dreams and out-of-body experiences. However, no matter what Joe said or did, the gatekeeper shook his head and said, "Wrong answer. You need to leave." After several hours of not being able to satisfy the gatekeeper, Joe was feeling thoroughly dejected, downhearted, and depleted. In that moment of utter despair, Joe thought, after all these years of studying, I do not know the answer to one simple question. Who am I? It's hopeless. I give up. But I'm tuckered out. Before I leave, let me just sit a while, close my eyes, and relax. With that, Joe sat on the ground, folded his legs, and closed his eyes. Since he'd used up everything he'd been holding onto, Joe could see that for the first time in his life, his mind was completely still. There were no thoughts. There were no regrets about the past. There were no plans for the future. There were no visions, no fantasies. There were no projections. There was no waiting for this or that. There was just silence. In that silence, Joe let go of everything. He dissolved into silence. He became that silence. Although it seemed like just a few minutes had passed, hours went by. Eventually, in the far-off distance, Joe heard the chimes of a church bell. It was 6 a.m. He had spent the night in meditation. When he opened his eyes, Joe saw the gatekeeper was smiling. He had moved close to Joe. The gatekeeper had built a small open fire. On the fire, a kettle was boiling. The gatekeeper had made tea, and, much to his delight and surprise, Joe saw that Ma was sitting in front of him. She was looking at him intently. Her eyes were wide and sparkling. They were shining with the most amazing love Joe had ever felt in his life. Ma was holding a cup of tea in both hands. She was leaning in and offering it to Joe. And as Ma placed the cup in Joe's hands, she said, "Welcome home." So, who do you resonate with in this story? Are you just starting out on your spiritual journey? Are you excited? Are you learning to meditate and to chant? Are you reading all the books on spiritual awakening? Are you excited? Are you trying to do all the practices, sometimes all at once? Or are you like the gatekeeper? Have you been on your journey, on your spiritual journey for some time, and you have refined your seeking? You have chosen your path, or your path has chosen you. You are following a teaching or an enlightened master or a path that you resonate with, that you really love, that you honor, you respect, and you serve? And have you created boundaries around what you'll let in and what you won't let in, as a way of protecting your space and honoring what you know to be true about yourself? Or have you taken the final step? Have you had yet another awakening where you have come to realize, not just as a concept, but experientially, have you come to realize that the form of God, the form of the master that you so love, the path and the tradition that you follow and so love, is a reflection of your very own self? And in truth, there's no difference between you and the one you revere, whether that's Jesus, Lord Buddha, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Have you come to that place of complete self-recognition? And have you come to that place by, in the seeking stages, having to put everything down, to leave it behind, to become humble enough that you get literally put your head on the floor, you go down to your knees and surrender to all that is? And these, in the story, what is being described are three very broad phases. There are obviously phases within phases that we can speak of in the awakening process and as we move through the awakening. And each one is perfect and each one is very, very beautiful in its own way. No matter where we are on that journey, it's, it has its own importance, it has its own value, it has its own power and sweetness, and also, its own difficulty. So with respect to really exploring and looking at, honoring your soul contract, if you have an understanding of where you are on your journey, you'll then be able to understand whether you are recognizing your gifts fully and authentically and completely, or whether maybe you're holding back or you're not seeing things as clearly as you could be seeing things. The truth is that the real contract, the primary contract, let's say, and the primary purpose of every single person on the planet is the same. It's not different for each one of us. It's the same purpose or the same contract, which is to wake up, to have an awakening, to realize that I am not just this body and this mind and this physical expression. I am not just that person or a person. I am that which precedes thought and movement of the mind and the emotional body. I am much more than that. And that's the primary purpose of everybody on the planet. And again, this is spoken about really, really beautifully in one of the yogic texts. And it's, I'll tell you a very small little story about that, which I really loved. And it really sums everything up. And the story goes something like, just before we are about to leave heaven, about to leave God and enter into the mother's womb, we go to God and we cry, oh Lord, please, I really want to go to earth to serve you. This is my mission. And I really take this on and I take it very seriously and I'm happy to do it. But I'm afraid. Please help me. Please give me something so that I remember you. I don't want to forget that I am one with you. So God said, don't worry, my child. I will give you a mantra. And the mantra is, I am that. Just make sure to repeat that mantra in the mother's womb. And when you come out and when you're born, you'll be able to remember it and hold on to it. And in the yogic tradition, that is used to describe God, because then we cannot give mental concepts to that. And that describes God. So the soul said, oh, okay, that sounds good. That's easy. Let me go into the womb and I'll be good to go. So the soul enters the womb and, continually repeats, I am that, I am that, I am that, I am that, I am that. However, what happens as the time comes close for the soul to be born, fear starts coming in, anxiety starts building, and the baby's like thrown into this sort of turmoil, and it's just worry and concern about what will happen. And so that is forgotten. So what happens is the soul just keeps repeating, I am, I am, I am, over and over and over again. And turns it backwards. Am I, am I, am I, am I? And then at the point of birth, when the soul is born, out of terror at, what is coming, the soul starts looking for a word that it can hang on to. And it sees the first word or hears the first word, which is who. And who is attached to am I? And then for the rest of his or her life, he and she are trying to find the resolution or the answer to that question, who am I? And the beauty of that search, of course, for each of us is that, we undergo our own challenges and suffering and, whatever the story is, we go through these difficulties. And then that forces us to start digging deep and to really inquiring into that question. And sometimes we're gifted, like I was, with this radical awakening, even though I didn't know I was looking. I didn't know I was seeking, actually, is the truth of it. I was so naive. What did I know? So, sometimes that happens, and sometimes we're literally booted into looking at what the answer to that question is, who am I? Now, I would assume that every single person who is in the least bit interested in this week's symposium and all the offerings that have been ongoing throughout this week and into next week, everyone here has had some kind of epiphany or some kind of awakening. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You'd be off, looking for some other distraction. So by virtue of the fact that you are here, there's obviously some kind of awakening that's taken place, and you're, at various stages of that awakening. And maybe even you've put down seeking, maybe that has ended for you. And obviously, let me also reference, if you're at the point where you've ended seeking, it doesn't mean that you have stopped serving. There's still service that is ongoing, in the role. Let's call the Ma role. There's still service to humanity. There's still service to self with a capital S. So it's all beautiful, it's all perfect, you know, with respect to where you are. And now that you have some idea maybe of where you are in terms of your own journey, let's look at your innate gifts, skills, and talents. So what I would suggest that you do is, you know, especially when we come off this session, is just to do some journaling around what that means for you. You know, can you list, or if somebody asks you, hey, you know, what are your innate gifts, skills, and talents? Are you able to articulate them? Or are you able to write them down? Because surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, you know, we can, as human beings in this flow of life, in this flow of being consciousness itself, we can often be very articulate when it comes to the things we feel we can't do or we don't know about ourselves, and not so articulate when it comes to speaking about our gifts, skills, and talents. So what I would suggest, if you're someone that says, well, I really don't know what they are, or I'm not clear, maybe I know one or two, there's a very simple exercise that you can do, which will really help. And that is to think about, you know, since you were a child, what is it that people have come to you for and looked to you for and asked you to help with? Now, it might be that you're highly intuitive. It might be that you're very empathic. It could be that you're a natural caregiver. It could be that you're an amazing organizer and you're able to think conceptually about how to organize and plan events and programs and things like that. You know, and really what happens is we have friends and family members and people in our circle that are there, that show up to reflect back to us the things that sometimes we don't see in ourselves. So I would encourage you to look at that through your life and just make a list, you know, just write down a word or something that details what your, you know, your innate gifts, skills, and talents are. And then, so that's question one, you know, what are they? Can I articulate them? And then the second question is, am I utilizing them? Am I actually utilizing them in a way that is nurturing and expansive and inspiring? You know, there's a really beautiful quote in the Bible that, you know, I often speak of, by St. Thomas, who said, if you bring forth what is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you will destroy you. And there's so much truth in that, because what happens is, if we do not utilize our gifts, we start to feel depressed because we're depressing our innate gifts, skills, and talents. We're not utilizing them. We're not bringing them forth. And we start to feel that life has no meaning and that, you know, there's not much value to what we're doing. And certainly one thing that really does happen big time when you begin to awaken to the truth of who you are, is that you really get a sense, you really feel into whether you are living in a way that honors your gifts or whether you're not. So you'll really know if you're in a relationship, for example, that doesn't nurture you and that doesn't allow growth. You really feel it if you're in a job where you're not utilizing your skills, or you feel undervalued, or you are maybe half using your gifts and you're not allowed to use, you know, your best parts, let's say, or other parts. You really feel it deep in, to the point that sometimes it becomes so painful, you have to do something to make changes. It becomes almost a matter of life and death. because you feel it, so powerfully, deep inside yourself. And, if you can answer those questions, where are you on your journey? What are your gifts, skills, and talents? Can you articulate them? And are you using them effectively? Then I can promise you, you will be living your life on purpose. And it might be, a work in progress. Obviously, if, for all of us, if you're in a job that, that isn't giving you much satisfaction and you're realizing it, in most cases, people can't just quit their jobs and, hope that they're going to create something amazing and in alignment with who they are. It takes time to kind of build a bridge to another opportunity and to another life. But one thing that I can say for sure from all of this and from these kinds of inquiries is there's nothing that is working against you in the entire universe. If you are in a job that you really don't care for anymore or even hate, some people say, they hate their jobs. There's something in there that is showing you that you can learn from, that you will give you and empower you to make changes. And certainly what's happening in the world right now is an opportunity, if we look at it from the right perspective. Obviously, we can go into fear, we can go into anxiety, we can get pulled into the drama of everything. But if we choose to look at the situation from the highest perspective, we can turn it into a positive. Now, the one thing that I've heard again, and I know we all have heard this again and again, across all governments, across all situations that are happening globally, we're hearing the word that this is unprecedented. The virus and the way it's working is unprecedented. What's happening, with medical facilities in hospitals and the way the medical professionals have to respond is unprecedented. Everything's unprecedented. Politicians keep using that word because they don't know, they can't give answers for the first time. They can't tell you it's going to be okay in a week. Nobody knows how many people will die. Nobody knows, excuse me, how many people will survive or what the long-term effects are. It's really a situation where we don't know anything. Now, the good news about not knowing anything is that that is the state of a mystic. A mystic lives in a state of not knowing. He or she accepts everything that comes into his or her life. And they don't try to manage it or control it or avoid it or make it more pleasant. It is accepted as it is. There's a response in accordance to what is being called for, but everything is seen as a gift from God. Everything is a gift. And then the inquiry is, what am I supposed to learn from this? What is this showing me? And what am I being called to do? And certainly with what's happening right now, we're all being challenged in our own way. Everyone's situation is different. But at the heart of all of that, we're being called to step up and to start looking at our lives in a way where we can be of service to the whole and be of service to the light. And here's the thing as well, is that, at this moment in time, we've essentially run out of time So if you have some burning desire that you have always put to one side because you thought, this isn't the right time, I have to wait for my kids to get through college, I have to wait until I get a new job, I have to wait until I've earned enough money, whatever the story is you tell yourself about why you can't do something, it's time to just put that story down and let it go, because it is blocking you from stepping into the fullness of who you are, and it is blocking you from sharing your gifts in the most natural and expansive way possible. And in this experience, we can look to Lisa, who has done an absolutely amazing job with the symposium this week and will continue it next week. When the idea landed in her to, host this, she could have come up with, 50 different reasons why she couldn't do it. She was either too busy, she got too much going, whatever the reasons are, she could certainly have said no. And it's always about saying yes. It's so easy to say no. It's not so easy to say yes. So again, as part of your inquiry, I would look at, where are you saying no? Why aren't you saying yes? Because this is the time now. There's no time left. And in any case, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? There's absolutely no one on the planet that can do what you are doing in the way that you would do it. You are completely unique. You have your own style, you have your own feelings, you have your own background and history, you have your own inspirations and your own way of offering yourself to service. No one else can do it like you. So I would really, really encourage you, if you take nothing at all from the call today, other than, it's time for you to step into and own your gift, skills, and talents, then that would be plenty. And the other thing I would say as well, and really encourage you, once you have done some inquiry into your soul contract, where you are on your journey, what your gifts, skills, and talents are, how can you utilize your gifts, skills, and talents, I would really encourage you to find a way to take one step, to take one action step towards creating something new and something beautiful that is in alignment with what God has placed in you, what Source has placed in you. And really find a way of starting something new or expanding on what you have already, been giving and offering. Because this is a very right time for growth, because we're in this energy of not knowing, which is a time of really allowing you and allowing your creative energy to come to life. It's really allowing your spiritual energy to expand. It's offering you an opportunity to be able to step forward in ways that you haven't before. Maybe you've been afraid before, afraid of what others might think. That's a really big one. Afraid of failing, that's another one. Fear will always be there. But the thing is it's really about trusting the not knowing. and trusting the not knowing enough to be able to go, like Joe did, into your own silence within. Obviously we can use prayers and mantras, and we can do visualization techniques and all those things if we need to kind of calm the mind. But then having the courage to go inside the silence, deep into the silence within your own being, in order to receive the gifts that it has to gift you. And the thing is, you don't even have to take my word for it. Your own experience is proof. I'm sure through your life, you've had many times where you've really struggled with something, a big question. And you've tried to kind of rationalize it. And maybe you've asked all your friends, and you've gone to your tarot deck, and, you've maybe listened to somebody channeling a message or something, or, and you've gone onto YouTube or wherever, you've tried to get all the answers, and then you really just are going around in circles. And then at the point that you give up and you drop everything, you might be in the kitchen chopping vegetables or something, or cleaning or taking a walk. And the moment you become still and you drop everything is the moment the answers appear, the guidance comes forth. Because God is waiting for this space, for silence, to be able to speak to you. Again, the Sufi master, Mrs. Irena Tweedy, calls it the descent of grace. She also calls it the divine hint. But we have to be silent inside in order to be able to hear the divine hint, with respect to our lives and with respect to, what we have to offer and how we can offer it in a different way or a new way. It would have been very easy for me to say, I'm not writing that book. And actually, what happened was, when I was asked to write the book, I woke up the next day and I just said, there's no way I'm writing the book, because I don't want the ego to get involved. I just didn't want the ego involved, and and then telling myself how great I've done because I've published this book. And what I said was, if it's kind of dictated to me and I can just write it down, I'll do it. And then I forgot all about it. And then I think it was a couple of weeks later, my husband and I were house sitting at this beautiful home overlooking the ocean, on Grand Bahama Island. And I was on the deck one morning drinking coffee and watching the palm fronds, waving in the breeze. It was so exquisitely beautiful. And I started to hear, as if it was being dictated, this whole kind of story. So I grabbed a pen and paper and started writing it down. And that's how the book was given. And it was given because there was space, there was silence. It came out of silence. It was birthed from silence. And then, of course, I didn't have a clue how to get a publisher, but, and I was thinking, what comes first, the preface or the introduction? I really didn't know. And I grabbed one of the books off the bookshelf, which happened to be Eat, Pray, Love. And I'm looking through it to see, what comes first? And everything just kind of appeared when I needed help with anything. And the same was true when I was asked to create a website. It was actually Lisa that just happened to send me an email the next day and say, hey, guess what? This is a great platform for creating websites. And that landed, ting, the next day after I'd received this guidance about creating a website. And the same was true with course content and everything I've been asked to do. And I know this is not unique to me. This is your story too. Once you say yes to what you are hearing inside, and you step into taking responsibility for what you've been given. And you honor what you've been given. And you present it in the most beautiful way. So that is my encouragement to each and every one of you, because the world needs you right now. There's no more hiding. You need to step up in a way, obviously, that feels right and is organic for you, and in a way that helps to dissolve the fear and anxiety that is prevalent right now, in a way that helps to uplift humanity, and in a way that really honors who you are and honors your soul contract. So that's all I have to say. I've run out of words. And I just want to say once again, thank you so much for being here, for listening, for taking the time, and for giving yourself to this process. And thank you for any action steps that you might take after this session that will help to bring light and healing to the planet. And every single thing you do has great value and great purpose. Remember that. Even if it seems a small thing, it has great value and purpose. And we all benefit from your efforts. So thank you so much, everyone. I send you much love. I send you many blessings. And I'm really grateful for you. Thank you.